when I can do anything to get past that fear, it allows me to just open myself up. And I don't know, I like to think of creativity as like it's almost not even coming from me. It's allowing spirit to move through me onto the stage, into my videos, onto a canvas or whatever it is. And so it's really just opening up that channel to allow God, spirit, the universe, whatever word
Oh,
you want to use, it's all the same, but
yeah.
allowing that force to just move through you in order to create whatever it is that we want to create. And I think that all humans are creators, like at our core.
Welcome to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. This is Chris Miller. I invite you to join me as I interview artists from a variety of disciplines. We'll share powerful stories and lessons learned while making their art.
Good day, listeners. This is the Spiritual Artist Podcast, and this is your host, CJ Miller. I have, as always, I always tell you every time I'm really excited about today's guest, and I think that's part of the creative process, right? We learn to follow our excitement. Learn to follow our excitement. So this guy kind of started following me on Instagram, and then he reached out to me, and I love his Instagram posts, and we're gonna unpack this whole experience. But there's some neat stuff about him. So let me introduce Cam Leids. He's a storyteller and guide exploring the human experience through plant medicine, spirituality, and raw, honest conversations. On his YouTube channel, and as the host of and I was saying this is the name of his show, Being Human and Shit podcast, he dives into the beauty, chaos, and transformations that come with awakening and inner healing. With a mixture of humor, blunt truth, and heart, Cam helps people slow down, question everything, and rediscover what it really means to be alive. Hey, good day, Cam. I don't know if it's afternoon or morning where you are. Same time.
Yeah. Same time, noon.
Noon, straight up noon, straight up noon. So I'm really excited to unpack all these things that you do, and we chatted a bit, I think last week or the week before. Um, so tell me, when you talk about first, let's unpack this because this is where I was really attracted to listeners. Um, I've been doing some pondering. I had someone that I interviewed, oh gosh, half a year ago, and they mentioned that part of their process for getting creative, getting into that place was smoking marijuana. And at first I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to talk about that. And so I started thinking about it and talking to my friends about it, and I started realizing that any sort of some people will have a glass of wine, some marijuana, other things that do come into the creative process. And I'd be honest with you, listeners, I kind of had a block with it. I'm like, oh, I don't go there. But that's not true because I have had a glass of wine when I have painted. So I want to talk to Cam about this. He is an expert in plant medicine. Is that right?
That would be correct.
So
I
how did
wouldn't
you
necessarily consider myself an expert, but I'm certainly more well versed than the average individual.
well, tell people here. First, tell them where you are staying right now, and then let's talk about this. What are you doing with plant medicine?
So I currently live in a place, a little town called Pisac, Peru, which is just outside of Cusco, which is one of the major cities here in Peru, close to where Machu Picchu is. And I moved here almost 6 months ago at this point from Denver, Colorado, which has certainly been a really big change. But one of the major reasons why I moved here was to deepen my relationship with the plant medicines that I work with. And one of the main plant medicines that I work with is ayahuasca. Um, One of the ones that I've worked with in the past that I still work with very closely are magic mushrooms.
Uh-huh.
And I know that there's been, I guess, what a lot of people in the media are referring to as the psychedelic renaissance right now, which is there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of just news coming out about using psychedelics and plant medicines to help people heal and to help people deal with trauma, become more creative, get past mental blockages, connect more with themselves, connect more with God. And I've certainly had all of the above in with, those types of experiences, and it's become, I mean, it's become my life. Like, this is one of my deepest passions in the world, is using these natural medicines that were put here on earth for us to use and for us to help us connect with our higher selves, with our spirits, with God. And I think that that is the key to unlocking all of these other things, especially on any sort of like creative journey or creative path, is whatever it is that you can use to help you connect with that. That's what you should do, and that's the
Uh,
thing that's worked for me.
yeah, I think you're right. Who am I? I was thinking like my reaction at first. Who am I for one thing, judging is taking me. I know for a fact that when I'm in the state of judgment, I step out of creativity and
Hmm.
I step out of love. So you told me, I think that you grew up in Denver and that I think you didn't
Grew
really
up
have
in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles, but you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
have much experience with these type of things. No, when
No,
you were
not at all.
so
Yeah,
okay.
so
Tell me about the first time and how did you? I mean, because I imagine was it not a little intimidating?
so I did not come into it with this, like, reverence and intention that I would recommend people come into it now. I came into it in college, and so excuse me. Growing up, I was very like anti-drug. My parents were also very like anti-drug, like even smoking marijuana. That was, very, very fringe and very frowned upon. However, and I did mention this to you on our call, alcohol was totally
Oh,
fine. Like that wasn't considered a drug. That was in its own class. And now I very much will consider alcohol just as much of a drug as everything else that I'm talking about, just as much of a drug as even like ibuprofen. Like, understanding that these are substances and these are drugs that are meant to alter your consciousness or alter your brain chemistry in some way, shape, or form. I don't think there's any necessarily better drugs, like good drugs versus bad drugs. Um, it's more of just understanding, what is it actually going to do to you? What is it going to do to your brain chemistry? And is that ultimately helping you achieve whatever it is that you're really trying to achieve? So like, intention is really the first thing. But I came into it in college. Um, and honestly, I'm going to be very honest with you about
of
how
course.
this happened.
Yeah.
Um, so I had friends that were really smart, like, pre-med people, like people that were, in science and biology and like all of these things. And they would smoke weed and they would use other drugs. And so seeing like these really smart people around me engaging with these substances kind of made me start questioning, okay, wait, like, these can't all be bad people. Like, if they're doing this, it can't just mean that they're throwing their lives away and they're not, able to function in society and all of that. So it was just that first questioning. Um, and I tried marijuana. Honestly, did not like it. I still kind of have like an interesting relationship with marijuana, and honestly don't really use it very much anymore. But the first drug that genuinely opened my mind to all of this was cocaine,
Oh my
which
gosh.
is which is not a drug that I would use anymore and that I engage with. But that was the first one that opened my mind to the possibility of just using substances to alter your brain chemistry in some way, shape, or form. And so using that opened my mind to then using psychedelics. And so I had my first experience with mushrooms in college, with just a couple of my buddies. And again, we just kind of took them and had an afternoon. And it was a cool experience, but it wasn't super eye-opening. It wasn't like amazing by any means. But because I had that experience, that opened me up to LSD. And LSD
Wow,
was
you
really the
have to. I
first
didn't realize.
experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
done, I mean, I love, I have love and respect for all the substances, all
Uh-huh.
the psychedelics, at least at this point. But LSD was the one that really like opened my mind so much and made me become so aware of my thoughts and of my thought patterns. And I didn't even know that there was any science that was backing any of this at that point. It was just, when I used that substance, I would notice the way that I would react to things while I was on that substance, and then think about, wait, if I was just sober right now, I'd react completely differently. Like things that would normally piss me off or get under my skin, I just didn't care about. And I noticed that, like, wait, I'm not caring about this right now. That means that I can just choose to not care about this when I'm not on these substances too, that I can start to make these subtle little changes in my life to be more present and be more aware, and not be so reactive all the time, and angry, because I used to be like a pretty angry and reactive person.
Yeah, you said something really neat there, and I want to repeat it for the listeners. uh, you start watching yourself, right? I think what you're saying is sometimes when you're on these plant medicine drugs, it gives you the ability to step back from your little self. I call it the little self, like little Chris, right? And you watch yourself and you go, "Isn't that interesting? I do this, or that I'm afraid of this, or what?" Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so that was like, I mean, it was mind-boggling, like mind-blowing to have that experience coming from never having that experience before. And I was very turned off from religion at a young age. And then because of that, I think my relationship with spirituality and my relationship with God was just like, I don't need this in my life. I'm not even going to think about it. I'm just going to focus on me. And like, I was very egocentric. And then when I started using these medicines, it just took me out of that. Like I had no choice other than to realize that like I am separate from my thoughts. And that was
Oh,
never something that I had even considered in my life before. I was always living so much in my head. But fast forward a little bit, LSD, I used that for many years, especially during college, and then during COVID too, just because there's nothing to do.
right.
But that opened my eyes to ayahuasca, and that was really the medicine that just changed absolutely everything for me. And I was at a point in my life where I had graduated college. I had like an amazing job, like a couple of years out of college. I was making six figures. I was living in Chicago, and everything in my life on paper looked incredible. And I felt like I had no reason to be unhappy or anything like that, but I felt pretty unfulfilled, just generally. And I could see myself just repeating these same patterns and not being able to find a way to break free from them. And I had no idea what the issue was, what the underlying thing was there. But I was called to ayahuasca, and eventually I made my way to Peru for the first time and did a 1 week ayahuasca retreat where you sit with ayahuasca for three ceremonies over the course of that week. Um, and that just, I mean, if I genuinely consider there was life before ayahuasca, there's Cameron before that, and then there's Cam after that. And that experience, the biggest thing that it gave to me was showing me what genuine self-love felt like. I had never truly understood or felt what it meant to truly love myself for all of my shit and all of my garbage and all of my shadows, all of the things that I was holding on to and trying to run away from for my entire life. I was forced to sit there and look at all of that and like make the conscious choice to let it go and forgive myself. And in that self forgiveness, that's where like the self love came from. And then pretty much from there, I was like, okay, I think I need to make this maybe the main focal point of my life moving forward.
Well, so ayahuasca, let's can you isn't that's been used through centuries, right? But was it
Centuries, if not millenniums.
yeah, is it American Indians? Did where did it
So
tell me some
yeah, so
history?
the Native Americans, they typically use peyote or
Oh,
or they
okay.
use mushrooms. Ayahuasca is native to the Amazon jungle. So pretty much like there are just tons of tribes. If you look in South America, throughout like Brazil, Ecuador, and Peru, that live in the Amazon jungle, and that's where it's native to. And it's a vine, which is like the ayahuasca vine. I'm not going to say the scientific name right now because
That's
I'm
all
going to
right.
butcher it, but it's the vine, and then it's mixed with a leaf, typically a leaf that's called like the chacruna leaf, and so that's a DMT containing leaf, which DMT is um, the drug that they think, like researchers think that your brain actually naturally produces DMT on its own, and it's released when you're born, it's released when you die. And so it's a
Oh,
very, very powerful drug, but like our brain also already has the ability to produce it itself. At least that's one theory that hasn't been proven or disproven. But so that's what ayahuasca contains. Plus, with the actual ayahuasca vine itself, it contains what's called an MAOI, which allows the experience to be activated when you drink it rather than smoking it. Because typically DMT is something that people smoke, but with ayahuasca, you drink it. It's made into like a brew. You drink it out of a shot glass, and then that's what allows your body to process it through the stomach, and allows the experience to last much, much longer.
so I want to. There's a couple things I'd love to talk about. So let's go back real quick. I think it's really interesting how, as a society, because I do pay attention to like how we're raised in a society, we're taught certain belief systems like, oh, alcohol is okay, but pot isn't, although that's changing. And
Hmm.
LSD. I've read want some wonderful books on that. How they shut down all these hallucinogenic type drugs, where when there was a lot of growth occurring, but they were afraid of it. Like the American government was
Hmm.
afraid of it. And I think what it's important for the listeners to realize is how we are told certain relationship to things. And I will agree with you. When I was in college, I did smoke pot, and I never had a hangover. I never felt horrible. I never threw up like I did with alcohol. I mean, I have stories with alcohol that made me feel
Same.
horrible, right?
Yeah.
Horrible. And I think it's interesting how we so readily say, "Oh, well, this is," and the truth is, I don't know if you heard about this in Texas. They tried to block the gummies
Hmm.
recently, and they couldn't do it like under only for 18 and below at this point. They're trying to block it, and the reason behind it is because of the manufacturers. There's the alcohol companies, lobbyists don't want that to happen. They want to cancel out the gummies because it's competition for them.
Yep.
And so when you start realizing that all of these things like marijuana, alcohol, ayahuasca, it's all about oftentimes about competition and once again, right? Politics, the politics behind it.
It's all politics. Yeah, I mean, if you don't mind, if I can speak on that for a little bit,
Yeah,
just
go
because I'm pretty
ahead.
familiar with the history of psychedelics, is like back in the 1950s and 1960s, LSD and mushrooms were completely legal. And so researchers and psychologists were using them and realizing the incredible potential that they actually had in helping patients get through trauma, get over, PTSD, depression, anxiety, whatever it was. And it was already considered at that point a breakthrough therapy. Now, at the same time, the Vietnam War was happening and the hippie movement was also taking place, and LSD was the main substance that they were using, which was a big, political um, thing because, the hippies were obviously very, very anti-war, anti-government, anti what was going on. And because they were fueled by LSD, there was no way to just necessarily arrest them for protesting and for talking about their beliefs and being against the government. But if you make the thing that they're using, LSD, illegal, that's how you can now get around that loophole, and now you can start arresting them and making sure that
Oh man,
they can't speak anymore.
how interesting, right?
Hmm. Yeah, they
What's
knew that there
yeah.
was no actual like public health issue with the substance. Like they knew the science that it was not actually messing people up and it was not actually dangerous, but it was dangerous to their political agenda. So that's why everything got completely canceled. And by the mid 70s,
So I want to ask you, because I can't remember this. There's a book about this that I read. Do you remember the title?
How to Change Your Mind.
How to Change Your Mind. So, listeners, that's a good book to read that talks about the history and the politics
Hmm.
behind this. And
Hmm.
I do you said it much better than I did, but I remembered reading that they were using this for therapy and for trauma and helping people move beyond, and it was having major strides. But then what happened was all these researchers started losing their funding
Hmm.
because they were afraid.
Hmm.
They were afraid to pursue it. Um, so it's a great book, right? And I think there's actually a show on Netflix like about
Yeah,
that.
there is. Yeah. So they ended up turning it into like a short Netflix series as well, which is also incredible.
It is. And so let's talk about that series because I've never done it, but
Hmm.
they explain what it's like when you take these mushrooms, and they talk about this incredible sense of and I'm going to have you try to explain something that's probably unexplainable, but the feeling. How does
Mm.
that this feeling of like connectivity is that
Yeah.
what it's like?
So yes and no. Like yes, in the sense that like so many people do feel that way, but there's so much that can happen, and it's so dependent on the individual that is taking it, and it's also very dependent on something that they talk about called set and setting. Set being what is your mindset going into the experience? What is your intention? Why are you using it? And making sure that you have thought that out, making sure that you have a reason that you're wanting to, have this experience in the first place. And then setting is where are you physically located? Like, is there somebody that's there watching you, guiding you through the experience? Are you, alone in your house? Are you, at a concert for example? Depending on where you are, that can drastically alter the experience like so much. But yeah, I mean, my my experience with it, most times I will feel some sort of overwhelming sense of connectivity, meaning that I'm not just Cam anymore. I'm part of the whole universe. Like I'm you. I'm this table. I'm this chair that I'm sitting on. I am part of the earth. There's no separation from me and the earth. There's no separation from me and the rest of the universe. And it's hard to describe what that feels like because it's less of a description, and it's more of just a felt experience. And unless you have really felt that experience, it's hard to really wrap your head around. Because if somebody tried to explain that to me, I'd be like, I have no idea what you're talking about, beforehand. But afterwards, yeah, it's amazing. And then also too, like underneath all of that, when you're feeling so connected and you're feeling that unity, you feel the love, like the pure unconditional love that I think is at the core of this entire human experience. Like everything that we're created from, comes from that sense of unconditional love for everything and everyone and yourself. And then then the mind comes in, and that's what creates all of the issues and all of the identities and all of the egos and personas that go on top of it. And we just forget that love. And so I always like to tell people too that, whenever you're on these substances, whenever you're engaging with psychedelics or plant medicine, or even just meditation, even, things like that too, you're not ever learning anything new. It's not bringing any new information into the fold. What it's doing is helping you remember what you actually came from, and helping you remember who you truly are before you started creating all of these egos and absorbing all of this information from society, and thinking that that was you.
Yeah, I think that's really it's very interesting. More and more, when I listen to spiritual leaders, we're talking about that your mind, your intellect, even your identity of I'm a male, blah blah. That even knowledge doesn't really bring you peace.
Hmm.
It's the recognizing that place behind the knowledge, that the watcher, or Eckhart Tolle would say the watcher, that and I agree with that. I agree more and more if I can quiet little Chris, blah
Hmm.
blah blah blah, little Chris is always going, like all because it's reacting to the body, it's reacting to belief systems, it's reacting to fears, judgment. But if I can just be the watcher,
Hmm.
And I do it my own way. I do it when I paint. You know,
Hmm.
I have a practice, and it's taken me a long time to do that. But I do it. I get there, Cam, and I do feel that when I'm at that place, when I'm just painting and I'm in the moment, or when I'm speaking to an audience and I'm just connected to presence, I feel what you're talking about. That love. I feel a sense of, I feel connected to everything in the room. I feel connected to the people in the room, the furniture in the room, everything. And so
Hmm.
I think it is a similar, if not the same.
I think it's exactly the same. And like that's also I think something that's really important to note is that I don't think that psychedelics are the answer. I don't think that it's for everybody necessarily, but it's a tool. And if you know how to use the tool, just like a hammer, if you know how to use the tool on the nail and, rather than just waving it around and, throwing it and, thinking that that's going to work, if you can engage with the tool in a respectful and in an intentional way, it has so much power to help people get past that and to speak a little bit more on kind of what you were just talking about is like when you can be the observer and you could just be the watcher, what that's doing is getting past what's called the default mode network. And the default mode network is the ego. That's what's doing the judgment, and that's what's put in place to actually help us be more efficient. Because if we had to go through our lives and think about every little tiny thing that we do, like if every time you woke up you had to think about, okay, wait, how do I walk again? Okay, how do I go brush my teeth again? How am I supposed to do all these things? You'd just be so slow, you wouldn't be able to get anything done. So what that default mode network does is like it teaches us and automatically helps us with some of these like rote patterns that we just do within our lives. So we have the capacity to think of other things. And so what psychedelics do, if you look at the science behind it and a lot of the research, is it shuts down the default mode network. So that way the ego just isn't in the way and you could immediately get past that and go to those places that you're typically too scared to go to. You typically are, they might be uncomfortable things that you don't necessarily want to deal with that you've shoved to the back of your mind. It allows you to go there without the judgment and without the fear and be able to just look at it objectively and feel the emotions and feel what needs to be felt that's underneath all of that.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah. I mean, and that's how I would say, even go so far to say that's how we heal. We
Hmm.
heal when we step back from our default net, because those patterns are only are not, it gets to the point whenever you have sickness or illness, and I don't mean just physical, but mental. It's patterns that aren't moving or changing, right? You're just stuck in a loop.
Hmm. I
And
would say that emotions are just energy in motion. And so a lot of the times the problems that we have are because there are stuck emotions within our body because we didn't allow them to fully move through and we didn't process them because it was hard and because it was scary. And we all do it. And I continue to do it as well. And that's why having some sort of spiritual practice, something that allows you to be the observer and to not judge the experience that you're having, it just allows you to feel whatever the emotion is that wants to be felt in that moment.
oh, that's lovely. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Because you talk about that you were talking about the process of it and the experience. Do you feel that does it enhance your creativity, or do you think it enhances your creativity?
Absolutely. I think that one of the biggest blocks for me in my creativity was my own mind and fear of judgment. Like, I think that's been one of the biggest
That's a
things
big
that
one.
I've had to overcome is that fear and like just getting out of my own head of like, oh, what if this is bad? What if people don't like it? What if I don't like it? And allows me to just sort of see like how silly that is, how
Yeah.
genuinely silly it is to not do something because of the fear of how other people are gonna think about it, or the fear of it not being good enough or anything like that. And so, when I can do anything to get past that fear, it allows me to just open myself up. And I don't know, I like to think of creativity as like it's almost not even coming from me. It's allowing spirit to move through me onto the stage, into my videos, onto a canvas or whatever it is. And so it's really just opening up that channel to allow God, spirit, the universe, whatever word
Oh,
you want to use, it's all the same, but
yeah.
allowing that force to just move through you in order to create whatever it is that we want to create. And I think that all humans are creators, like at our core, we are all creating something. And like we were created from God, and therefore we just need to continue that creation process. And somewhere along the way, we get told by society that no, you have to go get a job and you have to do things this way, and it's all supposed to happen, and we lose that sense of creativity at some point in our lives.
I everything you just said is so CJ Miller, and I totally agree. I totally agree with it. I was finishing a painting this morning. It's behind me, and um, it's wacky. It's very wacky. And there's that little Chris that goes in, oh, this is wacky. And I sent a text to a friend with a picture. What do you think? And then I immediately stopped myself. It doesn't matter what other people think.
Hmm.
And what I try to teach through the spiritual artist is what matters is that you let that unique expression of God that is you, that no one else can
Hmm.
do, that you do it. You let it
Hmm.
happen. And it's like you
Yeah.
said, you just let go and let it happen. And trust it will be its own special thing. And by that I don't mean it'll make a lot of money or it will be what it's meant to be, you know?
Hmm. Exactly. And like, I mean, one of the biggest lessons that I've gotten throughout like my spiritual journey is the deep understanding and knowing that everything in this moment right here, if you can be fully present, everything is perfect right now. There's nothing more that you need to do as a human being in order to be worthy or feel love or anything like that. Everything that you're doing right now is perfect, and it's all just part of the journey. This part of the journey is no better than the next part of the journey, which is no better than, the part of the journey where maybe you are a famous artist and you're selling your paintings for thousands of dollars
Hmm.
or whatever that is. But, if you can't enjoy where you're at right now, you're not going to enjoy yourself once you've even made it to that place anyways. So I try to spend most of my time just understanding how to be okay and how to feel fulfilled with the exact place that I'm at in the present moment. And just know that if I stay open to that, the universe will just continue to show me, okay, here's the next step. Here's the very next step, rather than trying to focus on 20 steps ahead.
I love that. I really do believe that the universe will show you the next step. We do so much where we try to force it or make it happen or plan it. If we just chill, you know,
Yeah.
right?
If you don't mind me asking it, I guess like when did your real like spiritual journey start and how did that get you here right now doing the spiritual artist?
Gosh, I mean, it was a lot. It's just been a lifetime of experiences, and there, being my listener, being gay, being I will say this, being born gay, it forces you outside. You talk about that pattern. It
Hmm.
forces it there is a gift in it. It's very challenging. It's very hard to be gay. I will say that. But there's a gift in it because it forces you to step out of yourself and look at society and when you step out of society, you go, why do they do that? Or why are they so hung up on girls wearing pink and boys can't wear pink? I mean, who cares? And suddenly, Cam, you start questioning everything.
Hmm.
Everything. You question what the Catholic priest tells you. You question what the instructor at college tells you. You question everything and in a healthy way. And you go, is that true? Is that true? And so the journey just started through friction. That's the
Mm.
best way to say it, right? Like when you were sitting in school or when you had that job and you were making money and you thought and everybody told you that's what it meant to be arrived, right? And you're sitting there going, I hate this, right? It's that
Yeah.
friction. It's that friction that made you step out.
Hmm. I think really too, it's like the friction of just, I don't know, I've growing up. everything was like very black and white. Like this is how things are done, and this is just how it is, and this is how it's supposed to be. And then I think there was always that deeper part of me that just kind of understood none of this shit makes any sense at all. Not one part of this that anybody is telling me makes any sense, and I'm tired of pretending like it does. I think we just need to realize that none of this human existence makes sense. And if you're not open to that, then like you're making a conscious choice to just close off to the endless possibilities and like limitlessness of what it means to be a human and like what it means to be like alive on this earth, because I can't explain that and I never will be able to explain that, nor do I think it matters to be able to explain that, but just being able to accept that, okay, this doesn't make sense. And like that to me was just one of the most freeing things to really feel that and believe it, and finally just honestly just say fuck it and
Yeah.
be like, I'm gonna just do what I want because none of it makes sense anyways. So why would I spend so much time doing these things to impress other people that are not making me happy at the end of the day?
It really does, doesn't it? It comes down to maybe three choices. You can choose to just cram it in and ignore it and just follow the pattern and feel the tension and as you age it gets worse and worse. You can choose to end it, which sadly some people do. Just
Hmm.
or you can choose to just say, "Okay, you know what? I'm going to step out into this and I'm just going to
Hmm.
see what it means to listen to that inner voice, to
Hmm.
listen to that calling and be different and wear pink." you know gosh, god forbid, right? Cam, I grew up in Pittsburgh, which is a very blue collar city, and to wear pink was like no boys could wear pink. And those silly things, right? Just silly things. Like, how can a color have a sexual orientation to it?
It's truly, truly wild how like, but it's funny because like something like that happens and then, enough people follow along to a point where then more people just start agreeing with it and agreeing it without questioning it until it becomes like this is the standard. This is just what we do. That's just how it is. And nobody really questions it or thinks any differently of it until somebody has the awakening and like just the honestly like the balls to just be like, no, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to question this and I'm not going to care what you think about that, which can be, I mean, which is terrifying, like going against the grain and like going against societal norms like that, and like can be genuinely dangerous for people. And like I do understand that as well. Like there are people with a lot of with a lot of hate in this world. And if people do things that are differently than them, they will feel the need to act out
Right.
violently in some way. And so it's not always safe to do that. And I do want to recognize that, these concepts and these things that we're talking about are not easy. The mind is really incredible, but like the mind also has the power to free you from those things as well. So it's both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's not. You're right. It's not easy, and there are people that get violent and hurt people just for being who they are. And I try to hold out to those people that the spirit of who they are continues on. But
Hmm.
it's hard on this plane to see that, and so it isn't easy. Um,
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said and repeat it just because it was really valuable. You said that when you do something like these plant medicine, it's very important to have the right setup environment,
Hmm.
that you have a guide with you. And I remember that from the movie, that people with a guide would have a much better experience. You'd be in a safe place. We've all had
Hmm.
that experience, right? Where even if it's alcohol, where you have a drink with friends and it's a wonderful experience. But have you ever had a drink with someone you didn't trust, right? And it gets
Very
dark.
different.
It's very different, right?
It's like I want to leave.
Right. And sometimes I was so naive, I would get physically sick, like cramps and everything, because my body was and it's about listening to your body. My body was saying, get away from this person, get away from this
Hmm.
person. And I'm
Hmm.
like, no, 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 just, and so
It'll be fine. I'll live
it'll be
forever.
fine. Right, right. So let's talk. There's one thing I wanted. I remember you mentioned this, and I just thought it was really interesting that early on when we talked a week or so ago, that you changed your name, your
Mm.
first name. Explain that? Why is it important to change your name?
So I don't think everybody has to change their name. And it's not like I like legally change it by any ways, but I grew up Cameron
Uh-huh.
Leeds, and my family, my friends for the most part, they would all call me Cameron. And as I did get older, and like as I started going to college, like once I was in college, people just kind of started calling me Cam. But like I also saw leaving high school and going to college as like this fresh new start for me. This were all of the, I mean, I went to school at Ohio State from California.
Um,
There's no reason that you would just, go to Ohio unless you want to start something new. So,
really? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Um,
Mhm.
no, it's true. But yeah, I mean, it was a fresh start for me, and people just naturally started calling me that. Well, actually, a lot of people also just called me Leeds. But either way, I saw that as like this is my opportunity to be who I want to be and like choose what this name actually means. And so, like, I think that there is a difference between Cam Leeds and Cameron Leeds, because the Cameron Leeds is just associated with uh, a lot of the things that I just don't really believe in anymore that I used to believe in when I was growing up, that I absorbed from society and from my parents and from my friends at that point. And, once I got past that and realized like I'm just not this person anymore, it sort of just made sense. Like I'm just gonna start going by Cam now. Now I will say too, the funny thing about that, and I don't think I mentioned this when we talked before, is that I was actually sitting in an ayahuasca ceremony a couple months ago, and during this ayahuasca ceremony, um, ayahuasca was talking to me. And I'll also say this too, and this might be a little far out there and a little hippie for some people, but
That's all right.
I believe that when you're using these substances like mushrooms or ayahuasca, the natural ones that come from the earth, it's not just taking something and things are happening in your brain. You are interacting with another intelligent being. Like ayahuasca is its own spirit, it's its own life form that exists in the energetic realm. You can't see it physically, but it fully exists. And mushrooms are also their own spirit that physically exists in the energetic realm that you have the ability to access and talk to when you take that substance. And so either way, I was talking with ayahuasca, the spirit of ayahuasca, and it was this whole ceremony just about like understanding who I am and like sort of owning who I am. And there was this point in the ceremony where she told me to like sit up and just repeat over and over again, like, I am Cameron Leeds. I am Cameron Leeds, and I am proud of who I am. And like, just to be able to like own that with my full body. And, but also at the same time, sort of the recognition that being Cameron Leeds can be whatever I want it to be. It doesn't have to mean all of those things that I was sort of trying to run away from by going by Cam now. Being Cameron Leeds, I can still choose what that means. I can still choose what Cam Leeds means. And so I still go by Cam for the most part, but I think I'm starting to see less of the difference between Cameron and Cam as I continue on this path now.
Well, that's really interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's you know,
What
yeah.
made you want to start going by CJ rather than Christopher?
Well, I think it's maybe it represents an intention. And for me, I had when I was in college, I was CJ, and then when I went into the business world, I went back to Chris because, like you said, in my mind, I was told that that's what business professionals their full name, Christopher, And so it was just like 2 years ago, I thought, wait a minute, I really like being CJ. I like being that to me it's friendlier and open and why did I feel I had to give that up? You know.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's all how we or let me say the spirit of ayahuasca is right. Because why do we can change how we feel about anything. It's changeable.
Hmm. Yeah. Anything at any given moment, you can just choose to be different or to do things differently and not hold on to the past meaning that something in your life had. And as an example, my first time sitting with ayahuasca, when I felt all of that self-love, a lot of what I had to let go of was shame and guilt. I think that plays a huge factor in a lot of people's lives, is that we hold on to a lot of shame and guilt that we've been made to feel throughout our lives for, acting out in school, acting out with our parents, not being the good kid, not getting good grades, just being different in some way. And so we hold on to that shame and guilt and make that part of our identity, because like we need to do that for self-preservation, like to protect us. But then as we become adults, we don't realize that we're still holding on to all of that, and a lot of it just doesn't serve us anymore. And so making that conscious choice to look at all of the shame and guilt that I was holding on to, and then choose to let it go. I'm not going to let the fact that my dad used to yell at me all the time as a kid, I'm not going to let that affect me anymore as an adult, because that's silly.
Yeah.
Why would I let something that happened 20 something years ago affect my entire personality now? Like it doesn't have to mean something. And it's hard because we create this identity, and it does mean so much to us. And so like letting it go is scary, because it's like, who am I without this? And we don't necessarily know the answer to that anymore. And so when you let something go, you're forced to face that reality of, who are you without this? And now you have to take responsibility for everything that happens in your life moving forward. And you have to do that, which is terrifying. Like you can't blame anybody else now. You
Right.
can't blame your parents, you can't blame your teachers. It's all up to you. And so that can be, you know a transition, like moving into that, taking responsibility for your life. But I think that it's something that must be done if you want to reach, tap into your full potential, and like really be able to tap into your higher self.
That's wonderful. That's beautiful. So much of what you say is so in alignment with my beliefs and the way I work. And when I watch your posts on Instagram, what you're saying is so clear, and direct and impactful. Um, so you're definitely getting some clear data, you know. So I want to ask you about this because this is something new you talked about, and that you're tell me about this new podcast. What's inspiring you for it? It's just on a totally different side of you, I think. So uh this being human and shit podcast. So
Yes.
what's your vision for this?
So my vision for the Being Human and Shit podcast is to explore every single part of the human experience. And that includes the shit. That includes the stuff that we don't want to talk about, the stuff that we pretend like it's not there because we're always trying to put our best foot forward and make people see us in a certain way. I want this podcast to get beyond all of that, and to just have real, open, honest, and raw conversations about our lives and about what we've all been through and experienced, because so many people, whether they talk about it or want to admit it or not, can relate to all of that. Like we all know what it feels like to have our heart broken. We all know what it feels like to feel like we don't belong here. We all know what it feels like to be depressed or anxious. And being able to talk about that with a smile on my face and bring light to it and say that, yeah, we all feel that, but like you don't have to hold on to it. It doesn't have to mean anything. Like how are we addressing it, and how are we talking about it? Even if you're still in it and you're not able to get past it, being able to just openly talk about that and be like, yeah, that's fine. Like there's nothing wrong with that. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. And one of the premises for this podcast actually is the fact that I'm only recording episodes with people after I have sat in some sort of medicine ceremony with them. So it gives us an opportunity to, really connect on a very deep level and see each other go through the shit, to then
Yeah.
be able to come out on the other side and have that conversation about it. Um, and so yeah, I'm really excited. This is my second podcast now. My first one was the Trip Sitting podcast.
And
Um,
how is this different? How tell me how do you see this as being different than the first one?
So the biggest one is that I only plan to record episodes with people in person because I felt that any time that I record in person
Oh,
episodes with the other one, it was just it was such a better energy that I was able to tap into. Also, of course, the fact that we're only recording after sitting with, medicine that involves a whole another, complex layer that that we have to do. But I mean, to be honest, it's actually kind of the same podcast. Like I'm not going to pretend like this is radically different because the other
I
one,
was,
my tagline was exploring what it means to be human, and this is also pretty much the exact same tagline for this one too. But I think what's changed so much is that I've changed, and like I've just been on this journey now for so much longer. Like I'm a very different person than I was when I started that podcast. Like there I was still really new to this world and like really exploring it and curious. And now I think my ability to actually hold space for people and to allow these conversations to naturally just come through us without trying to direct it, I think is so much better. And so again, it came to me in an ayahuasca ceremony where she was like, you need to kill the trip sitting podcast and you need to start fresh.
oh, how interesting. That's interesting. Yeah.
And yes, yeah, it's much more of just kind of like a mental thing of like this is like the new start.
But
Essentially
they,
going from Cameron to Cam, going
oh
from
yeah.
trip sitting to being human and shit.
But they'll be with you. Will they be in the same room with you? Or no? Are you going to do they have to be in the room with you for the new podcast? Or
Yeah,
could
yeah,
they
we'll be like next to each other. Like
That's
I'm only going to
hard.
be doing like in person. Yeah, so it involves a whole other logistical layer.
Yeah.
Um,
It,
that I'll see.
I know, because I talk to people. I've interviewed people all over the world, and it is wonderful to have Zoom because I could talk to someone in Australia, and then now you in Peru, and it's lovely. But I can understand that you, if you wanted to do it while you're on during a ceremony, the intimacy has to be there, or
Yeah.
it could go kind of wacky.
Yeah.
So,
After that, yeah, yeah, we record after the ceremony. So
oh,
like the day
after,
after. Yeah,
oh,
yeah,
the
yeah.
day after.
I did try actually doing a couple episodes of my previous
I
one during
saw
the
one on. I
ceremony.
did.
Yeah, it's hard to explain, but the energy is it just changes everything about the ceremony once you click the
Oh,
record button.
let's unpack that a little bit. I think it's because it's our humanness that drives the intention.
Mhm,
So when we are connected to spirit, like when you're on you're present, and you're
mhm.
just pure. In my words, not yours. You're just purely in love, and you're in gratitude and appreciation. It takes the human presence to push action. Does that make sense? To push the action.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so it would be hard if you were actually in a ceremony, because both of you are like love, love, love. But who's dry? There's someone has to. It's the humanness. Isn't that interesting? Maybe it's the humanness that drives the creativity. I don't know.
I
You
think they work in tandem with each other. Like it's not a one or the other thing. It's not the black and white that we've been made to believe is that it's having the balance. And like, yeah, I always say it's like the balance too of like the balance of the human being part of our nature versus the doing part of our nature. You
hmm
can't have one without the other. You can't be so do type A, execute all the time if you don't allow yourself to be, but you also can't just sit on a pillow and meditate for 24 hours a day, or else you're going to starve pretty quickly. So there has to be the balance. And this has been a phrase that's just been coming to me so much lately throughout the past month, but it's this old Zen proverb that says chop wood, carry water.
Yeah.
So
hmm
before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Nothing changes as far as what it is that you have to do as a human. But what does change is your your attitude around it and like the way that you're able to then be present while you're chopping wood and carrying water and have the gratitude and the love for the experience itself rather than thinking this is just a means to an end.
Right. There's so many layers to that
Hmm.
phrase, right? Because
Hmm.
I spent my whole life. I was raised. I'm German, and it was all about getting that done, right? Get her
Hmm.
done, and that says no. Just be present while you're doing it. And it also says that you're never going to stop doing,
Hmm.
right? You're always going to be doing it. Don't
Yeah.
think I'm going to get done. And then I what? Then you what? What? You
There's no
know?
done. There's no done. You always and until you die and become a spirit and whatever happens there, that's
Right. Exactly.
that's
Like
it.
people say to me, I want to, do you want to retire? And I'm like, what? What? What do you mean? Stop?
Yeah.
So I'm with you. And it's so funny when that word came to you, tandem. Yes,
Mhm.
it's both. It's both. It's a dance. It's a dance, right? The cosmic
Yeah.
dance. Being and
Yeah.
doing, being and doing, being and doing, you
Yeah.
know?
I love that word dance because like it is, I think that brings an element of play into it. And I think that like it like we need to see this human experience as play, like as fun. It's not so serious. It's supposed to be a dance and you're supposed to trip over yourself and you're supposed to fall down and get back up and do things wrong and make an ass out of yourself sometimes because it's just part of the dance, and like the dance itself is beautiful. Something that um Alan Watts always says. I'm a big fan of Alan Watts, if you're familiar with him, but like he says that he talks about dancing and he says, you know, the point of dancing isn't to get to the end of the dance. If that was the point of the dance, then the best dances would be 1 second and then you'd be done. The point of the dance is in the dancing itself. It's in that movement and that give and take of it all.
I love that quote. And I
Mhm.
tell my artists that I say, stop rushing to the end. What you're not here to finish the painting. You're here to be painting, to just be in the process of painting. And
Hmm.
the longer I believe the longer you stretch out that time where you're just playing,
Hmm.
the more creative possibility. The more creative comes out of it, you know.
Hmm.
Uh,
Yeah.
I love that. So one last question. We're running close on time, but I do want to ask this. So you mentioned that so because this sounds great, but that you're starting to do stand up
I did.
comedian. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So I started that about maybe like 2.5 months ago at this point. Um, and it's been something that I've always loved stand-up comedy. Growing up, I loved stand-up comedy and I always loved watching specials and stuff through college. Throughout my entire life, I've always found comedy, and like I mean part of what I talked about earlier was just like the silliness of life and like the fact that none of this makes any sense. Like that to me is it's the funniest thing ever, that we all convince ourselves that it does, but it just doesn't. And I find the humor in everything, like even the darkest parts of my experience. I'm always able to find the humor in the fact that I thought this way to begin with and there was no reason for that. So yeah, it's always been something that I've wanted to try, but like I've really shoved away because it's like the fear of just getting on stage and just being just you right there, is was so much to overcome. And it got to a point where, and again, this happened during an ayahuasca ceremony, where that was like she was just telling me, like, you've always wanted to do this thing. Why have you not tried doing this thing? Like, what's the worst that can happen? You get up there and bomb, and 20 people that you've never met and don't give a shit about
right,
think that you're not funny.
yeah,
No, like
it's a
that's that.
dance. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's just a dance to try to do that. And so yeah, and of course in all random places and all random things that just happen to come together and make sense. And I believe that the universe is always conspiring to give you what it is that you want if you're open to it.
I
But
do
there's an
too.
open mic night that happens here in Pisac, Peru, of all places, that I was able to go to and try stand-up comedy. Like, who would have thought that this would be the place that I would even get an opportunity to do that? So it was like, well, this just like everything is aligning a little bit too perfectly right now. So like I have to give this a try. And last night was my seventh performance ever. And yeah, now it's at the point where I'm like, okay, I actually do enjoy doing this. So now I actually need to start trying to get better.
I think that's great. Very interesting. That's a secret thing that I had always wanted to try. Um,
Mm,
but I do speaking, and I think and it's very similar. And
hmm.
I have the reason I've gotten to be a better speaker is I prepare, but I'm also ready to just be in the moment. Like
Hmm.
be in the moment. And I think as a comedian, you have to be the same way. You might have some jokes in your pocket, but you always have to be just play with the crowd, right? And
Yeah.
interact with the crowd.
Hmm. It's a
Um,
dance.
it is a dance.
Yeah.
Um, that's great. And now you speak Spanish as a secondary language, or do you?
I'm learning at the moment.
So what is your stand up? Is your stand up in English?
Yeah, yeah. So the place that I live in here, PSAC, it's there's a lot of expats here. So like it's
Uh,
a there's a lot of English speakers, and it's um like that's who comes to the open mic night.
well, I was thinking
Pretty much all
it
English
might be hard
speakers.
to think quickly in Spanish. I'd be
Oh
like,
yeah, I if I had to do it in Spanish, it I wouldn't even be close to funny.
So when you do this, because it's obviously one of your creative expressions, don't you just feel that connection? Like when you're up there on the stage and you make a joke and the people respond and you're really present, isn't that is that similar to your?
Yeah, it's so like it's about yeah, just being in the moment. And like, again, I look at it as like, it's not me performing, it's trying to open the channel to allow God to perform through me. And like, I'm just like the antenna that's holding that and receiving that. But like, the mind, the ego gets in the way so hard. And it's really like, especially in the beginning, it's just been about how do I tame the ego and how do I calm down and slow down and breathe and allow myself to respond rather than like trying to rush to fill the space and be like, am I funny? Am I funny? Are they liking me? Are they liking me? Just be like, it doesn't matter. None of this matters.
It doesn't matter. And you know what? I'll tell you something I learned as a speaker. I don't, and you can take it or leave it. Silence.
Mm,
Sometimes just it's scary as shit, right? But
yeah.
just stop and let the room sit in the silence. Then, you know, it's amazing. Silence is
Mhm.
part of your tool belt.
Yeah. And you're right. That's been something I've been really working on is like the slowing down and like the intentional pauses. But that is the scariest thing ever. Because like it's just void. Like you're just sitting in the
Uh,
void. And if you're not comfortable sitting in the void, then
they
the
won't
audience
be.
isn't going to be comfortable sitting in the void.
You have to set the example. It's like
Uh-huh.
it's purposeful. There's a void. And see, and that it changes the whole thing. I was listening to a comedian, they have them on Netflix or they'll have these comedians, and one of them I'm like, oh my God, slow down. Give a pause. He had good jokes, but he didn't give them time to react to them.
Hmm.
He was talking so fast they couldn't even laugh.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was something maybe I should try playing with that sometime. But anyway, so this.
CJ, all I'll say is if it's something you've been thinking about, give it a shot for 4 minutes at an open mic night, and nothing bad can happen.
Oh, listen to you. I love it. I love it. Thanks for the encouragement. Okay, so is there anything else you'd like to share? This has been great. This has been a great conversation. There's been so many wonderful. I always focus on listening for these aha moments, and there's so many in this clip that people can stop and they'll have to listen to again and again of words of advice. So, is there anything else that you'd like to share as we close down on this?
Yes.
Yes.
Number one is just like I'm so grateful to you and to your audience and anybody listening for just like allowing me to have this platform and to even be here. And like I'm so grateful for everything that's in my life. And that was something that I never really had gratitude growing up, and I never really understood or connected to that gratitude. And now it's such a big part of my life, just being able to just be in gratitude and like feel worthy of that. And
Yeah.
I felt that throughout this entire conversation. So thank you for creating this space. And yeah, I guess the last thing is, if anyone wants to find me on social media or also on my YouTube, everything is just at Cam Leads. So my YouTube channel and where the podcast is going to be is on YouTube at Cam Leads, and then my Instagram and TikTok is also at Cam Leads. And then also on Instagram, the podcast will have its own page, which is just being human and shit.
Being a human and shit.
Hmm.
Oh, well, that's great. Gosh, you're just like me. You have a lot of different oars in the water here, and they're very different, but they're great. They're all great, and there's no limit to when you learn how to step in. I call it stepping into spirit, but when you learn how to step into spirit, there is no limit to your creativity.
Hmm.
There's no limit. So anyway, well, thanks again for being on here, Cam. Listeners, thanks for following the Spiritual Artist Podcast. You can always get a copy of my book, The Spiritual Artist, to help you learn some of these steps to get you in that space. You can follow. I recommend following Cam. He does some wonderful little talks on Instagram, and also my new book, Spiritual Parable, which uses storytelling to help you get connected in the morning. I'm getting a lot of good feedback from that. So Spiritual Parable is on Amazon as well. Just take a search and you'll find it. Thanks again for following the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Go out there, be present, and then be creative. Talk to you soon. Thanks again for listening to the Spiritual Artist Podcast. Whether you're watching this show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, or iHeartRadio, make sure you choose the subscribe button so that you will receive updates when new segments are released. Most importantly, be still, listen, and know that you are a spiritual artist.